Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic and today we're out in the Yugo 45A. Now if you know much about these Yugos, you'll know that these have won many awards, but not awards that you perhaps want to win. Worst car of the 20th century, worst car of the 1980s, but to give it its due, it was one of the cheapest cars out there. It was in its super mini class and this car cost less than £3,000 new, which makes it cheaper than the Mini Metro, it made it cheaper than I think the Mini and pretty much everything else out there. So how can you expect the best car for that money? So in today's test, we are doing something completely different to journalists who love tagging everything as worst of this, worst of that. And we're going to give the Yugo 45A a fair hearing. Because this car got the first owner out of a jam. She had a car accident, she needed a car to get home from her holiday. She walks into a Yugo dealership and buys this car, affectionately known as Ruby, and absolutely loves it. She still sends this car Christmas cards every year. And for a car that's loved so much, it can't be that bad, can it? Well, we're going to find out in today's very fair test. Is the Yugo 45A the worst car ever made? Or did it get a raw deal? Come on, let's go and find out.
The Yugo range was the product of Zastava, who'd begun making cars for civilians in the middle of the 20th century, although you might have heard of them before because they were making stuff for the Yugoslavian army and they were making arms and stuff way before that. But by 1980 they had a firm relationship with Fiat, which might give some explanation for those of you that don't know much about Zastava, why the 45 and 45A are so closely related to the Fiat 127, although these are shorter because essentially Zastava took it and made their own car. But the Yugo range wasn't just for the Eastern Bloc, and in fact they designed a car for the world. They had visions of creating a car a bit like the Morris Minor or the Mini or the Beetle. They wanted, or a Fiat 500 in fact, they wanted a car that was for the world and was for every single person. And after the 1980 debut at, and I'm going to pronounce this probably incorrectly, Leipzig Trade Fair, the car went into production in 1981. It then makes its way to the UK market in the early 1980s. And if you're wondering where the 45 name comes from, it's because it's to match the promised 45 brake horsepower. And really it was coming in to provide another budget conscious offering to the market and also propel more people into the driving seat. Now for some people and naysayers it might have seemed like a dated concept being based on a 70s Fiat, but it was competing in that bottom of the budget market. It was a super mini for a person or a family on a really tight budget that didn't want to continue in that loop of unreliable, worn out, unsafe second-hand cars and instead buy into something new. Now it can be hard to believe in today's world of bloated SUVs and massive trucks that super minis were once indeed mini and highly popular. And really they were, because if you look at something like the Metro, even Princess Diana had an example. Super minis transcended class and age barriers in a way that perhaps we just don't see in vehicles anymore. And it wasn't just the budget buy of the UK either, because it was marketed at less than $4,000 in America. Yep, it was imported to America too. And it was 2/3 of the price of an entry-level new VW Polo of the same year. So this is like that mid-1980s time. And most importantly, it was affordable to residents of what was then known as Yugoslavia and helped so many people get on the road who'd just never been able to afford to do so beforehand. And that is probably the most wonderful and powerful thing that this car ever did. And so it's easy to critique a car made on the most meagre of budgets, but when you remember the significance and the freedom and the opportunity that it offered to people of the time, I think you can afford it a little bit more grace for being thin on the luxuries. But then again, what did the Yugo 45A have to offer? Well, actually, probably a lot more than you're expecting. So it's got all-round independent suspension, dual circuit brakes, which I've seen criticised elsewhere on tests, but on this car today, they were absolutely spot on. Fold-down rear seats, which is such a gift, because then it enables the driver and users of the car to have I think it's 27.5 cubic feet of space with the seats folded down. And then there are other small touches as well, things like headrests, two mirrors on the doors, heated rear window with wash and wipe, 2-speed wipers and a toolkit. Now you might say to me, Steph, that is a basic expectation, but back then most companies would have been having you pay extra for any item they could, right down to things like parcel shelves and sun visors, which by the way came as standard on this too, if you're wondering. And there are other complaints about build quality and things being a bit hit and miss. So it's worth mentioning by this time they'd really got these things ironed out. Now the brochure promises that dealers would do a 60-part check before the car reached you. You had various bits and pieces done to try and help with the corrosion, and you get a 12-month warranty with unlimited mileage, drive as much as you want, and again a 3-year anti-corrosion warranty. Now these are not all a given on competitors in the supermini market or even the budget market. Now sadly, despite all that promise and decent sales towards the end of the 80s, where even the naysayers say that they've kind of really got it right, and in fact it was the most exported car brand of the mid-80s, the car is marred by something completely out of its control, and the company, which is war and political instability of the time. And listen, not all the components had been sourced from what was then known as Yugoslavia. They'd got them from all different countries, which, guess what, we're now at loggerheads with each other. And with that, the British market sort of just dwindles into nothingness, which is such a shame, because these cars gave freedom to so many, and despite the scathing reviews, including the New York Times, which said it was the worst car ever made, and really people that fancied themselves as something more highbrow, being a little bit snobby, by the end of their time in Britain at least, they'd won the hearts and minds of more than a handful of folk who'd enjoyed their Yugo as a means of getting from A to B. However, this story isn't all doom and gloom, because perhaps not all is lost, because last year a piece went out in the press that the name had been revived and a new figurehead, inspired by Zonkel 45 no less, was set to bring back Yugo and budget motoring. So is it the end? Well, watch this space.
Well, coming inside here, this is one of the most beige experiences we have had in quite some time. And one of the things I will say is that all the moulded plastic is all held up really, really well. And for me, that shows a level of quality that I perhaps wasn't expecting after I'd read all the doom and gloom stories online. And it really does go to show that you can't believe everything that you read on the internet about these, or even in magazines, because bearing in mind, people love to hate the underdog. You know, you see it with the Marina, and yet so many people love them. And then coming inside here, I think, you know what, this isn't actually dreadful for the money. I think it's a jolly little offering, because there is, and I don't think we see it so much anymore, a real place in the market for absolute bog standard basic cars that are cheap, because they give people safe motoring that would otherwise have to maybe go into something second hand that perhaps is going to be unreliable. And bear in mind, these came with a strong warranty. They came with a 12-month unlimited mileage warranty, a 3-year anti-corrosion warranty, and then when they arrived at the dealership, apparently they had a 60-part checklist for the dealer to check them before they went out for sale. So it's all very well and good poo-pooing something like this, but actually, is it really that dreadful, or are there lots of hidden benefits to going for something like this brand new that perhaps you weren't expecting? Now, of course, there isn't actually that much on offer. So you've got this switch here, which is for your front fogs. You've got this, which is for your rear fogs. And as I press it, I can hear a little squeak from the dash, so won't be pressing that again. We come down. Now, we talk about this being a budget car, and it's easy to see where they've saved money. Things, for example, like there is no glove box. However, you have a very sumptuous parcel shelf there that you can get everything onto. Coming into the centre here, you've got your blowers. Now, these are ferocious. Let me see if I can... There you go. Straight away, they are so loud. Coming down from there, you've got your heater controls and you've got a cigarette lighter. Now, I point that out to you because when you were going for budget British stuff, you didn't always get that as standard. Sometimes you were having to pay extra for that. So again, just contextualizing that on where that is in this point in time. You come down into a stereo. Now, all the brochures that I read for these prior to test did not mention a stereo, so I think somebody has probably paid extra for that at some point. Coming down from there, you've got an ashtray, which very nice to see, it hasn't been used. So again, you just get that fresh car experience. And then you've got your 4 forward gears on this. Now, if you've ever been in a 55 or a 65, you'll know that they have 5 forward gears. Now, that was limited to the 55 and the 65. It doesn't get offered as an optional extra in the brochures for these, for the 45A. But if that was something that some dealerships were doing, let me know, because I'd be very interested to hear. Coming in front of us, we've got the Speedo, and it runs up to 110 miles per hour. But look, remember, we've got that 903cc engine giving 45 brake horsepower. I don't think we're going to be seeing 110 miles per hour, although I know plenty of you will have stories about these. So if you don't want to expose yourself but want to perhaps tell me about the time that you definitely got above the speed limit, let me know, because I can't remember what the top speed in these is. I think it's around 85 miles per hour. It's not enormous. Now, I think one of the things I do need to mention is that the fuel consumption on these advertised isn't that amazing, and I think that takes away from these in terms of going for a super mini, because that's what you want from a super mini, isn't it? You want great fuel economy. But on these, now, your general around town mileage was 30 miles per gallon, and then out on the motorways, so doing between 55 and 75, it's advertised as being between 35 and 45 miles per gallon. So not exceptional, but okay, I guess. I mean, that's what that's the kind of thing that I'm getting in the Humber, so I would expect it to be a bit better in something of this size. I mean, my Metro, when I had that out on the road, so again, a bit earlier than this, but I was getting sometimes 45 miles per gallon on, a half town, half motorway run. So anyway, so in front of you, you've got those two dials. So you've got the speedo and you've got a temperature gauge inside there. And then on the right hand side, this almost looks like a clock. It's really strange, with all the warning lights around the outside. And then just plonk down on the left hand side there, you'll see the fuel gauge, which I quite enjoy actually. So over on the right hand side, you've got your panel of bits and pieces. So you've just got your switches. Now, I will say, we talk about quality. These are a lovely sturdy plastic, so it means that for a high traffic area you aren't frightened to use them, and there's some value in that for someone who's buying into that second hand. Coming in front of us here, we've got our stalks, and we've got indicators, you've got your lights, and you've got your windscreen wipers, so you've got all those there. And then you've got, I'm gonna have to turn this blur off because otherwise you're not going to hear it, got probably one of the most fun horns we've put on test in a while. I did ask if that was standard, but apparently not. And that, I think, is pretty much everything that you need to be aware of inside the car. So all very cheap and cheerful. Budget motoring at its best. We should have more budget motoring nowadays. I think it would get more people on the road and save cars. But anyway, that's by the by. Something I will mention as well that I'm not particularly fond of is the largely offset pedals. The pedals feel really strange as to where they are, so they're right over here as well. But anyway, let's get it started up for you to have a listen. Have a listen from the back and then we'll go on a drive. Right, let's go on an adventure. So I'm driving along, okay, I'm up into fourth gear already. Gear change, by the way, was absolutely lovely. Sorry, just got slightly distracted there by the Nissan overtaking me. Very Nissan Qashqai energy, to be honest. And the gear change itself was absolutely lovely. My visibility is just smashing. If you've ever been in an early metro, I would say it's on par with that. In fact, it gives me real super mini metro budget car vibes, and I just really like it. And I think that I'm the exact type of person that would have been in the market for something like this, because I do like a budget runaround. Back in my early days, I was very much into my super mini stuff, and this for me, I really like it. There's a few bits of plastic here and there on the trim which make me feel slightly nervous. The piece of plastic trim that holds up the bonnet stay, that feels a little bit fragile. And there's a couple of bits of plastic elsewhere that I think, oh, and I don't know if you saw in the on the trim outside, it was held on with rivets, which by the way is as it would have been from new. And those kind of things make me feel slightly nervous as someone buying into one nowadays. But back then, I think I would have looked at the price tag and thought, blimey, I can either go and buy something a bit knackered that's full of problems that somebody else has owned for £3,000, or I can buy into this, which is brand new and comes with a warranty, and it also comes with a 3-year corrosion warranty. And if you think about the 60s and 70s, where so many cars have been absolutely riddled with rot after a couple of years, buying into something like this would have been deeply attractive. Now, I was talking to you as well about things like the dual circuit brakes, the independent suspension, and you know what, as I drive along, it's nippy enough, it keeps up with everything, it got up to speed relatively quickly. It feels very spacious and roomy inside for the size of the vehicle, and truly I don't have any complaints. I really like it. Now you might say to me, well, it's a low mileage example. Well, that's perfect then, because if you think about it, I'm then on a par with the people that were testing these when they were new, because they would have been testing out new examples. I particularly like the fact that as we drive along, I'm not hearing everything clatter, rattle, and be like as you go along. It actually feels very sturdy. The steering wheel itself feels very sturdy. I also forgot to show you one of my favourite details, which is the handbrake, which is also beige. I really like that. Now, I'm trying to think of things that I don't like about this. The offset pedals, not that keen. So again, the pedal alignment, not for me. The door cards look really strange inside. Now, I don't know what I can compare it to. It's almost a bit fuzzy feltish. And I think for me, that's just a very small design letdown on these. But you know what? It doesn't take away from the driving experience, which, as you can see here, the steering is lovely and responsive. It's really light. I truly don't have any complaints. I really like this. And I can totally see why the first owner bought into it. Because when you take something like this out, you've got to take it out on the merit in which it was sold. Budget motoring, a cheap car to get you around town, an easy runaround. It really isn't a car that is meant to be doing enormous amounts of mileage. But remember, those back seats fold down, you can get extra bits in. There's plenty of room for passengers inside. And a detail that I particularly like actually, and another one of my favourite design features, is there's a really neat detailing to the back of these front seats, which is you've got the standard pockets so you can put your maps in and stuff, but they've got zips in. So one of the things that I really hate about putting stuff in pockets on the backs of seats, and I think makes a car look really untidy, is maps sticking out, bits of paper. A zip just keeps it all really neat. So again, a thoughtful design that I wasn't expecting to see on something that was in this price bracket. Now, what else can I tell you about these? Well, of course, buying into something like this now isn't for the faint-hearted. Not because the quality isn't there for the money, but because, well, the parts supply maybe isn't as fruitful as it once was. Because it might surprise you to know that when these were new, and I was reading this in a brochure, so this is where I've got this from, they actually had a parts dealer, well, like a parts hub down in Reading, and they said that they kept in £5 million worth of parts in this country, which they were able to get out to their dealership network very quickly to give you that confidence of buying into a Yugo. Nowadays, these parts aren't as plentiful, and so for me, that would put me off owning something like this. But should I have been in 1988 perusing cheap motors in the second-hand ads and thinking, what can I get? And then seeing an advert for one of these brand new, you know what? I think I might have ditched my love of British Leyland and gone for this, because it drives well, it handles well, It's an attractive little car, it's easy to park, and all round it offers great motoring for a great price, which was exactly what it said it would do in the brochure. Now it's time for me to take this back. I would love to know what you think of this. I personally don't think it deserves the title of worst car of the 1980s. Yeah, you've probably got some that have problems, but guess what? That was motoring of yesteryear. Cars did have problems. Build quality was all over the place. It wasn't just this car. It was pretty much every single car from every single manufacturer, unless you were spending mad money. So there we have it. A snapshot of 1980s motoring. I've absolutely loved it. I want to know what you think. Did you own one? Did you pass one up? Share your stories in the comment section below. But for me, until next time when we're looking at something else from Al's collection, take care and drive safely.